Arcane, written by Neospector, Chapter 6. Tyr watched the glowing blue portal ripple inwards with energy. She had volunteered to take the test presented by the Goddess of Grandis. It made sense. She was a Nova, after all. Beside her stood Xenon, who stared blankly at the portal ahead. Tyr had to admit she was a bit unnerved by the cyborg, but she did feel a strange kinship with him. He had been through so much when he was young. It made the teasing and bullying she experienced as a child just for lacking a tail look shallow in comparison. Plus, Xenon could be his own nightlight with all the light-up bits. That was pretty cool, too. The cyborg turned to the Nova girl. Tyr took a deep breath and walked into the portal. Floating through space felt weird to Tyr, like swimming, but without the pressure from the water. The girl landed softly on an invisible platform, and the cyborg arrived shortly afterwards. The two took in their surroundings, Tyr awestruck by the beauty of it all, before beginning their march towards the bright light Yuki had described. The pair approached a stone arch decorated with various Nova building designs, as well as plants native to both Pantheon and Halcyon. In the center of the arch floated a figure in the shape of a ghostly pink dragon. Tyr couldn't help but feel that the figure, the goddess, felt somewhat two-dimensional, but quickly shook her head to relieve such worries. The figure's eyes snapped open, and a booming but clearly female voice spoke up.
Welcome. It is good to see you both.
The goddess paused, then stared intently at Tyr for a moment. Tyr couldn't help but fidget slightly. The eyes of the dragon narrowed, and she let loose a snarl.
You!
She shouted.
Me?
Tyr stammered out.
I told you never to come to this place again!
Tyr was about to open her mouth when a second dragon figure materialized in between the goddess and the two mortals. This time, a blue dragon with a more defined physical existence.
Aw, come on, baby.
Eskalade cooed.
Didn't you miss me? Even a little bit?
Xenon's normally emotionless expression was replaced with one of surprise.
You filthy, unforgivable beast!
The goddess raged.
How dare you speak to me after what you did?
I was just having a little fun.
Defended the filthy, unforgivable beast.
Fun?
The goddess fumed.
Nowhere in the Afterlands would that ever be considered fun.
Eskalade smirked.
I mean, I know a few places.
The goddess seemed to turn a deeper shade of red, and the air around the mortals seemed to grow heavy.
Leave this place at once.
The goddess demanded.
Never return.
Wait! You can't!
Tyr exclaimed.
We need...
The goddess boomed. Tyr felt herself being dragged backwards by some cosmic wind that grabbed on her clothes and yanked her around. Tyr gave a small but determined growl. She stamped her foot solidly on the invisible platform, and with as much force as she could muster, she shouted out.
No!
The words seemed to echo through the space as the force dragging her backwards died down. Unwilling to lose the momentum, Tyr turned to Eskalade.
Relic? Inside. Now.
She ordered.
Hey, hold on a second. Sweet.
Relic? Inside. Now. Shut mouth.
She demanded further. The blue dragon gulped and disappeared in a fizzle. Tyr sighed and turned to the goddess, whose red hue had faded slightly back to the original pink.
You are quite brave to order him around. And yet you act as a vessel for that beast?
The goddess gave Tyr an icy stare, but Tyr held her ground.
I don't have much of a choice.
The Nova girl answered. Tyr took a deep breath.
Do you know what happened with me? And what happened with me and Kyle? The Kaiser?
The goddess stared.
I do not typically engage in the affairs of mortals. But you are the Kaiser's lover, are you not?
Tyr nodded, not even bothering to blush at the statement.
I am I love Kyle with all of my heart. I do love him.
Tyr felt herself shaking, but commanded herself to remain steady.
And as annoying as it is, without Eskalade, I'm nothing. If I hadn't met Eskalade, I wouldn't have my powers. I wouldn't have my friends. And I wouldn't have...
She felt her eyes begin to water slightly, so she kept her head down.
I wouldn't have Kyle. I would be alone, sitting in a ruined fort, made out of bed sheets, pretending to be useful while Kyle fought by himself.
Tyr waved her hand in front of her, and a series of pink sparkles flitted out.
Without Eskalade, I wouldn't be able to do that. I was born without magic of my own. I need to rely on the power of others no matter how much I don't want to.
Tyr turned her head up at the goddess sharply. Water lined her eyes, but she refused to actually cry.
But what's wrong with that?
She shouted angrily.
Even if my power's not my own, I can at least use it to fight. And if I have to suffer through some perverted dragon's delusions about making me into a superhero pop idol, an idol for crying out loud, then so be it. If it's necessary to fight Magnus, if it's necessary to fight the Black Mage, if it's necessary to fight them or anyone like them alongside my friends, alongside Kyle, then I'll do anything it takes.
Tyr straightened and looked the goddess in the eyes.
Now please, give us your test, goddess.
A stunned silence hung in the void. Tyr and the goddess glared at each other in some kind of imaginary contest to see who would relent first. Finally, the goddess heaved a sigh and turned to Xenon.
And you, human? Would you do the same?
Xenon blinked. He had been analyzing the emotional outburst Tyr had made. Neurons in circuits sped along trying to determine what he ought to say.
My power,
the cyborg started.
It is also borrowed, though not willingly. Moreover, unlike Tyr, I cannot give my power back to its progenitor. The details, however, are irrelevant to the final conclusion.
Xenon's normally blank face contorted into a determined expression.
I will use this power to regain what I have lost. Whether or not it was mine originally is irrelevant to what I intend to do with it. I have been given power, and I shall use it.
There was another silence. Finally, the goddess heaved another sigh.
I can't exactly argue with either of those two speeches.
The goddess's voice seemed calmer than before.
One made from emotion, one made from logic. Both determined to fight for what they believe in. You have my approval.
As the goddess finished speaking, the air in front of Tyr shimmered. Tyr held out her hand, and an irregular orange stone appeared. Tyr gave a sigh of relief, followed by an awkward bow.
Thank you, goddess.
My dear, you have more of your own power than you realize. I realize that living with that beast can be a burden far greater than any individual battle.
Tyr giggled a bit and nonchalantly rubbed the drying tears from her eyes.
For the sake of both Grandis and Mapleworld,
the goddess said, as Tyr felt herself fade from the event horizon.
I hope you do well.